Now. And we will begin. This is our 5th webinar series in the CAPE network. It's a pleasure to bring everybody together this afternoon in a number of time zones, all the way from the East Coast of the US to colleagues in Estonia and Lithuania, and maybe even oh, and also from Greenland. Okay, fantastic. And of course, our guests and the featured presentation from Scotland. I'm David Yokin. I think we know everybody here. And there are a number of students from the Arts Academy at the Turku University of Applied Sciences from our dance program who are following this afternoon. And I just want to a little bit of a few notes before we begin. This is the Creative CAPE Network, Creative Arts, Pedagogy and the Environment Network, that is supported by the Nordic Council of Ministers, Nordplus for Higher Education. We've basically had to pivot very quickly, like everybody else, from what would have been a number of live in-person workshops that would be focused for students and teachers coming from disciplines of environmental science and the arts working together to this basically this online webinar. We're hoping that towards as we get into this academic year and perhaps in the new year, we will be able to meet together and have those proposed workshops. But for now, we've had the great opportunity to present a diverse range of subjects and topics by our network members and others. And we begin the fall with a wonderful opportunity to meet colleagues from Scotland and the University of Highlands and Islands. And I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Simon, who will kind of do a brief introduction, or is it Peter? I'm not sure the protocol today, but it is a great pleasure. It's a great privilege and a great honor to have them being presenting to our network today. So thank you so much, Simon, and I turn it over to you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David, and it's a real pleasure and privilege to contribute to this wonderful seminar series. You sent me last year's editions, and I'll certainly be sharing them with our students because it's a really useful resource that you're building up, and we're delighted to contribute to it. My name is Simon Bradley, and I'm the program leader of a master's, and we're going to share some of our creative and pedagogic work with you today. So hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see such a diverse, geographically diverse network coming together. So without further ado, because we've got lots we'd love to share with you and hear what you make of it and what you think, I'm going to try and share now a presentation, and hopefully we'll have liftoff. Does that
perfect?
Splendid. So I am the program leader of a master's program, Music and the Environment. We'll be showcasing some of the work, and I work for the University of the Highlands and Islands. It's quite a unique university. It covers a geographical area the size of Belgium. You can see on the right there the map, and some of the figures there, some data about the impact of it. So there's 9 colleges that have come together under this umbrella of the University of the Highlands and Islands. Very significant financial and cultural impact over this wide area. And we also have international students as well. We're pioneers in use of video conference technology. And there's a quote from the strategic plan there. I'm very excited actually in my role, which is 2 years now as program leader of this master's. And it's a really creative and fulfilling role, assembling staff, designing curriculum and module diets, and working with students, and then seeing, hopefully, if everything goes well, really satisfied students. And we recently got 100% in the National Student Survey, and we got an award for collaborative teaching. So it's a wonderful program to be part of and lead as program leader. It's underpinned by two key principles: geopoetics, which believes the various domains into which knowledge has been separated can be unified by a poetics, which places the planet Earth at the center of experience. So really connecting ourselves to our environment. And also eco-musicology, which is an area of study that explores the relationships between music or sound and the natural environment. So connecting our music, our sonic material to the environment. Today, I'm going to be joined by two colleagues. There's three themes that we address in the Masters: the natural world, three environments that we engage with, the natural world, historical and cultural heritage, and society and the creative economy. And first up, I'm going to invite Peter Noble, who's going to talk about creativity. We'll follow that with a contribution from Anna-Wendy Stevenson, who will talk about the value of collaboration. And then I will take it from there and we'll talk about career and practice. So I'm going to stop sharing there and hand over to Peter Noble, if you're able to take over from here, Peter.
Thanks, Simon, and hello to everybody. And I agree with Simon, it's a pleasure to be here and to discuss this with you all. I am hoping now to share my screen. Yes, thank you. The module that I lead on the Masters is called Space, Place and People. And as Simon suggested there, it is largely focused on geopoetics, placing ourselves in a creativity within an environment and getting students to think about that and to consider. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about an introduction. I've skipped on a slide too fast there. The image there of a beach, the distance between high and low tide is a liminal space, a space in between, a space where things can happen differently. And that idea of creativity in spaces where things are not predictable, in natural spaces or places where we are inspired, is a very interesting dimension to work with. And one of the most exciting things about this approach that we're taking with the students is that it's very much up to them. It's a very individual answer to the questions that we ask them. So I'm just going to pose, I guess, some of the questions that I ask students at the beginning and the introduction I make to them, in a hope that in it is the pedagogy and the pedagogical approach that we take, and that will make some sense. Polynesian people were finding their way across the oceans long before there was clocks or maps or GPS. Excuse me, my son's watches making a cuckoo sound. Great timing. Right, it stopped. So the Polynesian people were such that they could find their way long distances before we thought this was possible. They did this by the stars, the sun, the ocean swells. But one of the other things they did when they had young children is they would allow them to know the currents that surrounded their home island. So they would take them out in a boat and they would dip them into the water. They would feel the strength of the current. They would feel the temperature of the water, the direction, and they would know that intimately. They would feel that against their body. And an idea being, if they were lost at sea, that's sometimes what Polynesian would do. They would leave the raft and suspend themselves in the water until they felt the currents and recognized their way back home. So an opening question: what are the deep currents that surround you? What are those things within your life now and throughout your life that would pull you home? And those would be points of direction, suggestions of starting point for students when they began to think about space, place and people, which is a module that we don't want to lead them to one creative conclusion, but we want to allow them to begin to think about and consider what their creative conclusions might be and the directions that they would find most interesting as they continue. Bruce Springsteen, in his autobiography, talks about the place where he lived, his deep connection to one tiny part of America. He lives still very close to that. And right near the end of his book, this quote comes from there, where he talks about returning to the site of his first home and looking for this tree that it was the first tree he climbed. All of his memories are connected to it. And the tree was completely gone. There was nothing there. It was just a car park. But he talks about the fact that in his mind, that tree is still there. It has stood witness to everything that has happened in these small streets beneath its arms, all the joy, all the heartbreak, and all the life. And this idea that we have locations that are so inspiring to us, they're so embedded within us, that even if that location disappeared, I think we would almost be able to picture it because of so many layers of meaning and emotion are connected to it. Those are the sort of deep connections we want students to begin to consider and make. A limpet, I haven't got one in front of me, but I should have. There's a picture of one. It may be a different word. This type of shell is very special because it has a thing called a home scar. It only has one place where it fits perfectly. And what a limpet does is, as it grows, it begins to worry itself back and forward against that home scar. It finds a perfect location. And not only does the location fit, it molds itself, it worries itself so that it fits against that location perfectly. By being creative and expressing ourselves creatively about locations and specific parts of geography or even types of geography, we make ourselves closer to fit within that location. We find a deeper meaning and a deeper resonance with those locations, like a limpet. In Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, the elves of Middle-earth, everything they love goes into what they make. So the idea being that the same is true of artists, whatever our creative process is, and becoming more aware of that within the Master is something we really want students to be able to do, to delve as deeply as they can into those things that they love and to understand that those things that they love bear fruit in the creative expressions that they make. The resonance of wood, if you play an instrument, you'll know that not all wood is good for instruments. Indeed, some wood is perfect for it and some is not. There are certain trees that grow right up in the high valleys, in the very places that are hard to reach. There is wood there that has been grown slowly over time, where the grain is such that is perfect for tone wood, that spruce, and that resonance. Not all wood can do that. Each of us has that ability to create a tone, and encouraging students to think about what that tone is, where they have grown, the things that have shaped them through their life, the situations, the environments, and that effect on the tone that we make. David Haskell's book is a great read, and in it he visits 12 trees over a long period of time. And in one of these trees is in New York City, and it's not a particularly amazing tree, but one of the things he finds particularly fascinating about this tree is he puts microphones on it and he listens to what that tree hears and the reverberations. And one of the things he's surprised by is that you can hear the underground through this tree. And you can't hear it when you're just standing in the street, but it's the roots of this tree that have been affected by that. And obviously what that has done is then it has affected the way that that tree has grown. So those things, those deep currents, those deep resonances within us are what has shaped us, and obviously what has shaped us then affects the music that we make. So that is a very quick tour around some of the influences that we get students to consider and to think about. And the last point I'd make is I've just finished a book about natural navigation. So the shape of a tree, if it's on its own, you can actually see which way is north and south. So south, the branches will grow outwards, north they'll kind of point up. And this idea, if we become more aware and involved and engaged in environments that we're inspired by, we orientate ourselves better, and our creative imagination becomes more orientated to environments that fascinate us, which just lead us deeper into our creative paths and more unique in our creative results. And that essentially is what we're trying to do with this Masters, to allow students to convey and be inspired and to produce work that is uniquely theirs and feels uniquely present and inspiring to them, and in so doing make it more interesting and inspiring to others.
Thank you so much, Peter. It really is the sap that brings the nourishment and spreads it about the whole Masters. Really fundamental part of the course. Thanks, Peter. And I'd like to bring in Anna-Wendy Stevenson, another colleague, who's going to talk about the role of collaboration and what it can bring, the values it can bring to our students and programme.
Thank you, Simon. And that was lovely to hear from Peter. We're going to, after I've spoken a little bit, we're going to play you a video. So I'm not actually going to share a PowerPoint presentation as well, but it's lovely to be here. And what I'm just going to talk about briefly is collaboration. So one of the core values in our programs, which is why we were awarded recently the Higher Education Academy's CATE Award, the Collaborative Award in Teaching Excellence, is because of our core values and the success that we've had with working to them. So our values we described as collaboration, community, and creating a sense of belonging. And developing the musical community within our programs is very, very important because of, well, I would say that one of the things is that music making is naturally a collaborative type of experience and endeavor, but also our degree program, the way that we run things is using a blended learning. And so the sense of community and strengthening our learning communities is very important to our students and to our learning outcomes. But also our students are distributed, and they're distributed all over Scotland. And Simon's going to talk a little bit about that, I think, later. And so we've got students that are located in many rural areas, and they come together, as well as the central belt of Scotland, and they come together using, facilitated by the use of technology in our blended learning environment. And what we usually do is we hold residencies, which are face-to-face, and often these they'll take place in different locations each time. So we have 4 residencies a year, and we have them in maybe Glasgow, in Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides, and we mix and match them so our students are getting an experience of all the different facets of our communities and culture across Scotland, which is relevant to their development as applied musicians. We always make sure as part of our residencies that we engage with external agencies, and we have also, since 2014, we have been running what we call the virtual residency. So we actually, I think we were a little bit ahead of the curve, and in 2014 we ran our first virtual residency where our students collaborated online. So further developing online collaboration skills. So you can imagine that our students have been fairly resilient at this time. However, you know, working online during COVID is something that many people might consider to be kind of two-dimensional. And actually, I think that what's been very important and has demonstrated the enhancement and the value of engaging with external agencies is an example that we've had last year. So last year we set community as the theme for our first semester. And so this was building and enhancing community, nurturing community, and identifying the values and tools in relation to collaboration and expressing identity, extending our networks. And so it was wonderful when we had this serendipitous approach from Communityland Scotland to commission a piece of music to celebrate their 10th anniversary. This provided a really good focus for the development of activity and the content for our first induction residency. So this commission enabled our students who were scattered across not just Scotland, but the UK and some COVID-stranded German students, and also in Ireland and in Spain and Iceland to collaborate. So our focus was Communityland Scotland. So we really it enabled our students to stand back and consider what the Communityland Scotland was all about, and what it means to be in a place. And so we started off with Communityland Scotland describing a story of land ownership in Scotland. So from the times of disempowerment and population loss to modern land reform. And Communityland Scotland exists to support communities in land buyouts, and alongside regeneration, and enabling communities to take back control through community land buyouts, allowing them to grow their population and address local issues. And this is happening throughout Scotland. So the narrative actually seems to resonate with the rationale for the development actually of our degree, and also one of the central purposes of the University of the Highlands and Islands, providing accessibility. And it was a very transformative project for our students to really deeply consider land ownership and community empowerment, and to also find out more about the communities that they are from or living in. And so we collaborated to write this song, and they included Gaelic, which is the language spoken particularly spoken where I'm coming from today in the Outer Hebrides, and also in English as well. And our degree course is multi-genre, so it enabled our students to collaborate across genres to create this song, with the aim that this would be a song that could be a vehicle to enabling people to learn more about the work of Communityland Scotland, about community land ownership and empowerment. And it's been, as you will see in this film, the students recorded it, they composed, recorded, collaborative. It's a truly collaborative project across both the BA Applied Music and the MA Music and the Environment. And you're going to have a look if Simon can share with us the The University of the Highlands and Islands is a wonderful university to be part of. It's just fantastic in the last 10 years, watching the institution grow from strength to strength, and to be able to see the huge impact that it's had to be able to connect our communities locally, nationally, and internationally. Communityland Scotland approached us to compose this piece of music. It was a wonderful opportunity for our students to collaborate, and I think they've done this really successfully.
My name's Ewan Henderson. I'm from the Lochaber area originally, but I live in Glasgow. At a time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to have a creative stimulus such as this project, being able to engage with these different locations that have benefited from community land ownership around Scotland was a great bit of escapism. And being able to open up creative responses to that was just a lovely thing to be able to engage with at a difficult time.
So my name is Marit. I'm from Germany and I'm in the first year of applied music. My instrument is trumpet, so I'm trying to play Scottish traditional music on trumpet. I never really thought about Communityland because in Germany I've never heard something about it, but I really liked that people have a voice and get a voice, and so I really liked playing around with memories and connection between people, so I really liked the task.
My name's Liam Sutherland. I am a third year in the applied music course at UHI, and I'm originally from Caithness. We were sort of tasked with doing some research on Communityland Scotland and sort of talking about what that meant to us. So that was cool. That was cool to have someone come to UHI and say, we want you to write some music for us. It's a nice kind of taste of working in the professional world.
My name is Zach Scott and I'm a singer-songwriter based in Glasgow. I'm originally from Carnoustie in the northeast of Scotland. We were using new technology. None of us had done a music making process on a screen in this way before, whereby we were sharing one main sort of logic session and everyone was contributing ideas to it. That was really new.
My name is Zdenka. I'm originally from Slovakia, but I live in Scalloway in Shetland. I'm doing the third year BA Applied Music course. I think community land ownership is a good thing because it means that we leave something for the future generations. And it is always slightly easier when there is some sort of theme given before I start writing a song.
My name is Lucy Smith and I'm based in Moniaive in Dumfries and Galloway in southwest Scotland. It formed part of a module that was about collaboration. So it was a really fantastic opportunity for us to not only collaborate with each other, but actually collaborate with Communityland Scotland. To me, it's particularly important to be able to connect with people. And a musical connection is unlike any other connection that we see in any other parts of life.
We've been encouraging working collaboratively online through our degree programs now for many years. We've probably been ahead of the curve in that respect.
We just started chucking some ideas about. We had Zoom meetings and we got a Dropbox on the go, and we would just, any ideas we had, we would put little snippets in there and bounce ideas back and forth that way.
Then you can put it together, and we learn in applied music how to work remotely, how to record remotely.
There are these great tools out there now to be able to share large amounts of data for distance learning.
Lucy suggested that maybe we could find an image or a landscape taken from the Communityland Scotland website and trace it.
And then I combined those together and manipulated them to create what wasn't exactly a visual score, but something that we could work with in a way that you might work with a visual score.
And everybody keeps adding on top of that until the final track was ready, pretty much.
Students through this process, I feel, have learned more about one another through thinking about community and sharing their own experiences of their own communities.
Even just trying to work out each other's feelings and emotions towards community land ownership, because we're all coming at it from completely different angles. In the end, it turned out we were all roughly on the same page, which was good, but we didn't know that when we started out.
I really like that people can get the land back and have it as a community and work on it together.
It's given me an insight into something that's going on in Scotland, and suddenly you realise there's so much going on.
It just made total sense that the people who live there should make the decisions about the land itself.
I think it's an incredibly exciting thing, and it's really important to empower people to actually invest in their own communities and to keep making things sustainable.
It could be little things like, people just caring about each other. When there is an issue, everybody helps, and I like that.
I'd like to say thank you, Communityland Scotland, for offering us the opportunity to be creative and to collaborate and to contribute, hopefully, to our own communities.
So thank you, Peter and Anna-Wendy. I hope you could hear and see that video okay. And if so, what I'd like to do is continue on with some further information, if I can share, and then we will have questions. I would love to hear what you all think. So can you see a picture of some people playing music? David, can you say yes if that's the case?
Oh, yes, I did a thumbs up, but you didn't see me. Okay,
Oh,
yes,
I'm on-
okay.
Thanks very much. I'm on full screen. So I'm just going to tell you a wee bit about my creative practice and how it's fed into the masters. That's me playing the fiddle, the violin in my natural habitat in a session, in an informal jam. It's in the hotel. Everyone's invited. If you can play, have an instrument, you may join in respectfully. It's embedded in the culture, embedded in the community. It's informal, it's fun. And that was my introduction to music. And it also introduced me to a wider context, which is the Atlantic arc of Celtic countries. So I started off through family connections to playing Irish music. I then moved to Scotland and then went to Lorient, which is in northwest France, for the Lorient Inter-Celtic Festival. And then that introduced me to the Galicians and the Asturians. And that was part of a wider journey that I have embarked upon, playing Celtic music across the Atlantic arc. And where I am now is in this red area here, which is the Outer Hebrides or Western Isles of Scotland, which is a very special environment. There's a picture of me in the yellow wellies that the fishermen wear, the big open skies, the macha, that's the sea pinks. It's a beautiful, inspiring landscape. And when I first moved there, I had my first application for music and the environment. This is a project I involved. I was an artist in residence at the local art gallery. I worked with students, and you can see there just in the background some music, and that's grafted onto the landscape and informed the melody. And if there's time at the end, I might play you a clip of that. But that was my first inclination of music, the environment, pedagogy, and bringing these together as a creative impulse. Landscape, you can see there how music can be a response to a landscape and to a climate. You can see the Atlantic landscape there, which corresponds to the collection of Celtic countries, the Celtic Atlantic arc. And one of the first things I did when I worked for the University of the Highlands and Islands was organise a cultural exchange. Here's a couple of thoughts on the value of that. It's reappraising where you've come from and flourishing in contact with other cultures. Assimilation through immersion, from visiting, from cultural exchange. And this is a wee video clip of that project. And this is myself and the students and some staff members. And we've gone to Asturias, which is in the north of Spain, where my practice was based. And we're playing music on the Scottish and Asturian bagpipes together in a festival in the Celtic Atlantic Arc Festival. So that was just a member of the audience, and that was a transition from an Asturian tune into a Scottish tune, but the connections were there, the power of music to connect people. Here's part of the same project, and this is the student as researcher, and again through the form of the bagpipe, a common instrument. So if I can get to play.
So usual, everybody has their own florero, and even the pipe major I told you before, Remy Sovalle, made a tune with florero only. Like 3 minutes or 4 minutes. It's very known, and it's played in all the championships, I think, the finals.
There's a tune called Donald McLennan's tuning phase, and his was dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da da, and then they put that in the tune, and that comes in every part. So it's the same kind of thing.
Something like that. When I'm going to do a small florero.
Okay.
So there again, the power of music to connect people, the cultural exchange, and encouraging the student to become a researcher themselves. I want to talk now about how we apply our practice and how we try and chart our course. I remember David in one of the previous editions talking about change over time and how that links to sustainability. That's one of the key things, is how do you navigate, how do you project through that? And I've always been keen, I've shown you a bit about my journey, but it's the very bespoke and individual. All musicians' journeys are very distinct. It's not perhaps like a profession like medicine where it's more easy to project. So I'm very interested in that and hearing about how other people have done it. And I wrote a module which tries to help students orientate themselves within this journey, and that's called Sustainable Creative Endeavour in Contemporary Society, the business of you. It looks at culture as an ecology. It brings in the non-monetary sides of it. It's a more holistic view. It offers a view of the interconnectedness of everything, the necessity of embedding yourself and nourishing and respecting your landscape and environment. It brings in intangible cultural heritage, linguistic sustainability, and cultural sustainability. Also individual sustainability, the mental health, keeping up your inspiration, keeping up your belief in yourself as a practitioner. And finding the sweet spot. This is a Japanese concept, ikigai, and that is what we're aiming for. It's a planning tool. It's also a target that we try and orientate students to aspire to, that sweet spot where you can be sustainable, your raison d'etre. So to that aim, you need to be able to study your environment and think about trends and how it might change. Now, this is from 2016, the World Economic Forum, and that talked about the fourth industrial revolution, where 65% of primary children work in yet unknown jobs. And this was, of course, prior to COVID. COVID has had a massive impact on the creative industries, as everyone will know. There's some data there, and perhaps especially on Scotland, which has suffered greatly through this shock that we've had to adapt to and demonstrate our resilience. This module was accredited with the Scottish Institute of Enterprise, and this is a workshop we did. But coming into the 2021 academic year, because of COVID, I had to revisit this. The previous models had been upset, and this is part of the challenge for students and creative people. Here's what I tried to achieve. Obviously, as well as the impact on the industry, there was impact on individuals. Here's about, solitude can be productive. Library conditions can be good, but only if it's voluntary and you can nourish yourselves with the relationships without it. And in quarantine, that was not possible. So this was obviously a major issue for our students and staff. It relates to the affective domain, the emotional, and this does have impact on motivation for practicing and learning and engaging with courses. Bloom's affective domain, I aimed for the fourth, and what I did was to bring together different values, this looking at how other people have charted their course, their professional practice, and bringing in voices, up-to-date voices. And I organised a seminar series, and here's two of the guests. That's the CEO of Loyon Festival and some people from the gaming industry. And this was made available to 200 UHI music students. This gives you inside up-to-date perspectives. This is something that came up with the gaming session about going onto websites and boards and just introducing yourself. This was another, again, festival director, a big festival in Scotland, Celtic Connections, and there's some comments about people, about how it covered a diverse range of issues, and the ability to ask questions was thought to be very useful. Also brought in successful alumni. This is a student that did the degree and the masters, and you can see that they're not typos. 17 million hits on Spotify, and he gave a seminar on how he's analysed Spotify and become very successful in it. That was a very special session, which was very useful and popular. Everyone was cooped up, and this is a dangerous situation, as everyone can relate to. So I'll finish up with the pinnacle of this, the culmination of this, which was aimed at pedagogically we were cooped up, but we could, through our studies, through our engagement with each other, using the technology, have a sense of freedom, of guided and ideally free inquiry, where students could lead their learning. And I designed a debate, and this had industry guests. It had 2 teams of students. This house believes that's what in English-speaking debates we start off as the motion. And our motion was that we believe that the music industry would in fact grow back stronger after COVID, different but stronger, an optimistic view. Here are some of the guests we had. These are very significant with the Scottish cultural landscape. We had Head of Creative Scotland, the main grant giver, Peter Fletcher, very successful producer, studio owner, and Fiona Dalgetty, Chief Executive of the largest Fashion community music project. And they sat in. This was a statement from the Head of Creative Scotland, this sense of pulling together and listening to each other. And he was very keen to hear what our master students had to say. They were his future clients. We did polls, we had comments, and some of the ideas were very interesting and popular. Decentralization, plowing back profits into the community, and people were, I think, really cheered up by the positive and solution-focused approach. The students themselves, one key outcome for me as the tutor was to try and energize the students despite the COVID restrictions. And here's a couple of quotes here, to build momentum in their studies and inject interest in their studies, even when our endpoints were curtailed from the quarantine of COVID. So, final thoughts. At UHI, we are well adept at connecting people using video conference technology, and it works. It can work very well. We've demonstrated that. We've got good results and awards. But if people at either end are cooped up in their houses, that's where it falls down. So we look forward to having residencies and social choices again, as I'm sure everyone would agree. I'm going to finish now with, this was the last residency that we could do before COVID. We went to the world's longest reverb in a man-made structure. And it's actually, you'll see there, a store for furnace oil for the British Navy, for warships. And it was excavated out of solid rock, and it was for the Admiralty. And we visited this place. There we are in our Breaking Bad equipment. You had to wear lots of protective equipment. And we went in, and I'll finish up with this final piece here, which was, I think, encapsulates a lot of what we want to do on the Masters, music and the environment. And this is us in the tunnel. And I hope this comes out okay. And you get a sense of the inspiration, the impact that playing music within an environment can have. So I'm going to leave it here with this final piece of music. So that's what I wanted to say, and thanks for Anna-Wendy and Peter for joining me there. And I hope that last section really needs earphones to get a sense of that very special space and that very special moment. And I hope that came across.
Thank you so much, Simon, Anna-Wendy, and Peter. I'm just so taken by this just beautiful presentation. I think what came out, which I didn't actually say in the beginning, is that these are three recognized creative artists in their own right. But I think that has come out in this presentation, along with being the dedicated teachers and pedagogues that they are. One huge takeaway for me of the presentation is to see the remarkable impact on community that your program has, which is clearly part of one of the agendas, but to really see the engagement of the students in their voice and choice and opportunity to contribute not only to their home community, but the community of the group that they're part of. I'm just so taken by that. This is a time open up for questions or dialogue from everybody who's participating, and I hope there will be some questions or commentary, but I won't be the singular voice, so others please join in who are with us. I try to change my view to gallery, yes. Any comments?
David, I would like to say,
we have guests from around here's our friend from Murcia, Spain.
Yes,
Sebastian.
Okay, I very thankful to be invited here in this sense of community. Really touched my heart so much because I celebrate my wedding in Asturian Celtic region. I'm so connected with the Celtic culture, even though I'm living in the south of Spain. Really is touched so much this sense of community that you have really explained so well in your field of work and research. Thank you so much, David, for being invited here. Thank you so much.
That's Dr. Sebastian Gomez Lozano, who is a choreographer and dancer, but has also spent time in Scotland himself. And I think for many of us, that Gaelic, the Celtic Atlantic connection would be a whole other webinar presentation that perhaps we can on our own do some of our own research, because that's fascinating from both the geographical but from the cultural point of view.
Well, David, on that, I could share some resources because one of the modules on the Masters, we didn't have time to cover everything. I wanted to make it punctual to the 45-minute slot because you said that Finnish people like punctuality. But another module we do is all about music and identity and the Celtic arc, and we really hone in and focus on all the Celtic regions, including Galicia and Asturias. And Asturias is where my practice is based. I play in a folkloric group from there, and it's a pleasure to share these and encourage these connections. So thank you, Sebastian, for your kind words. But David, I wanted to say that with a local festival, which is called the Hebertine Celtic Festival, Anna-Wendy, in fact, led a series of seminars, and it had musicians from each of the Celtic countries talking about their tradition. So I'll pass those resources on, and if anyone is interested here, you can look at that. So that's leading exponents from all these Celtic regions talking about what the culture means to them and teaching a melody, a song from each part of those. So I'll share them, David, and you can disseminate.
It was also so nice in the documentation of the song with the student interviews. I recognized many of them from the debate, which I followed in real time that you had conducted. And again, that real world opportunity that you create, these vocational creative bridges for the students, and that professional development is so impressive. And I think for all of us who are working in our university settings, again, a great model to see how that functions.
Hello, I have a question. Do you hear me? I teach visual arts in Bodø, north of Norway, and I'm an artist also collaborating with musicians and composers. So this was incredibly interesting for me to hear and see. I have a question to you, Simon. You said at the beginning, no, sorry, Peter, you talked about the unpredictability between what happens in nature, and this, what is unpredictable. That is something so important when we are working with creativity also in visual arts. So I was thinking, how do you communicate this? How do you use it in your teaching, in the way you teach at the university? Maybe a question to everybody, but this is something so important. As I heard you talking about this, I thought, how do you use it? And I think maybe my second question I would like to combine with the first. Do you also use? Do you also work with visual artists? Do you have collaborations there?
Thank you for the question. I'm sure others may add things. I guess the point being about that, working with any creative people involves that unpredictability. And I guess we'd call it the fuzzy front end, where the possibility is there and that nothing is yet fixed. So in our approach, even to that module, which goes obviously a whole term, we're not saying at the end of it, they have to actually define what it is they're going to do. Even at the end of that module is to have a series of possibilities. So I guess that would be my short answer, would be to be open to the fact that there are so many possibilities, even with an individual response, and to encourage the individuals to not just go to the first response. And I've forgotten what the second bit was.
The second was if you are having collaborations with visual artists or students focusing specifically.
We do across the university of many different departments. I'm involved in overseeing the film degree in contemporary filmmaking, and we make real efforts to try and get students to work across disciplines. So that is something that's not formalized. I would like it to be much more frequently able to happen, but because obviously of the nature, especially in the last year and a half, the way folk have been working, it has been more difficult to join up those. But we have in the past done projects right across drama, music, film, creative writing. We've tried to combine all those students to develop projects together. So that, like you, I see that as a hugely beneficial thing for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also asked this question because the approaches often are very different from people doing visual arts to those doing music. We often in the visual arts work much more alone or for ourselves. Sometimes we have collaborative actions, but this is rather seldom. And I see that you're working much more in the communities, that the students learn how they can collaborate as a natural part of doing music, I guess.
I would just quickly comment from my perspective of being a musician working with movement and creative movement and dances. Improvisation is a big core of working with that unpredictability and the sensitivity, and also that lack of structured goal direction is often reached through improvisation, which I'm assuming obviously is part of the tradition of what happens in the music program that you're working with. It's the Zoom moment where everybody's kind of frozen out, or in real time they're freezing. Any other comments or any other contributions anybody would like to make? Thank you, Charlotte, for your input and question, and Peter for responding.
I just had a quick question, and I really enjoyed the presentation. I think my question would be sort of like, how do we get students thinking about these things early on? I know here in the States, undergraduate students have so many things to think about in their first 2 years. They're sort of overloaded with courses. I'm wondering if you guys had any insights about integrating this earlier into, music students and broader creative practices, education earlier on, like in the first 2 years of an undergraduate degree.
Thanks, Davine. Yes, it's the first thing we do, basically. We get the paperwork in place, but Anna-Wendy leads the degree with Peter and myself. The first residential, which is face-to-face where we can. In COVID, we've done online, but immediately, we do the kind of admin and, the kind of factual stuff, but they're immediately thrown together and they have to interact creatively over the week. So that working together, that striving for creative paths, solutions to problems that they're just hit with, it's the first thing actually we do, and it's quite a deliberate thing. We also have icebreakers. We do things like we have a staff who do there's a thing in the UK called Desert Island Discs. They're just social icebreakers, and you talk about your records, music that's meant a lot to you. What would you take to a desert island? It doesn't matter. We've had bake-offs, which is like baking cakes together, but it's all about getting the students to actively interact, forming those communities of practice, and getting creative right from the get-go.
I love that. I think that's great, and I really think you guys are doing some great work. I think we think of music so much as this activity centralized in major metropolitan areas with orchestras and record companies. I think having this sort of network of schools and students being able to receive that high level of education, in a more rural setting, more setting connected to nature, I think is really powerful and hopefully can be replicated at other places. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we feel, and Anna-Wendy and Peter can join, it almost seems cruel because, we meet up and these are people, it's a very, very demographic, 18 to 80, different genres, different instruments, different abilities, different backgrounds. And we bring them together and you say, right, hello, the concert's on Friday, this is Monday, and there's no music to play. This is out of nothing. We'll give them a theme like health and well-being. So they're really thrust into, and it almost seems like a manipulation. And sometimes, and it's always, Peter and Anna-Wendy jump in, there is a kind of curve and it goes through some fraught moments, but they kind of learn and they come through it and they always come out at the other end. Each year, we've done it 10 times now, producing amazing, unpredictable, wonderfully creative outputs, and they're transformed by it. So it's right from the get-go.
I just want to mention for sure, they're being so humble. There is a remarkable University of the Highlands and Islands playlist on Spotify of their student, current, and graduates, and you will, the diversity of style and performance level is just phenomenal. It's one of my go-to listen opportunities in my morning commute every day or coming back from home. Simon, may I share that with our network members? Okay.
Please do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, any other formal comments? This has been so actually quite wonderful to have this large geographic sweep of participants in many different time zones. If not, I sincerely want to thank Simon, Anna-Wendy, who had to jump off. She's teaching now, and Peter, and would love to see maybe somehow in the future of our Cape network of engaging University of the Highlands and Islands and these three great artist teachers to be actively part of our network. Otherwise, I'm wishing everybody a great afternoon. I have some information. We have a really fascinating next presentation, a young Finnish woman scientist who is part of NASA's research vessel to Mars, who's going to talk a little bit about the environmental focus of that project but just a wonderful way to begin this fall time of presentation. And again, want to send many thanks to Simon, Peter, and Anna-Wendy. Wishing everybody a wonderful afternoon, and we will be all in touch. Thank you from Finland to Scotland and everybody else.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This we will be sending, we'll document the recording. It will be YouTube, but the YouTube is focused on our website. So for those of your students or others who haven't been able to see it, it will be there. Oh, lots of here, let's do also. Hand claps. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Bye.